So hello, my friends, and welcome to Quartet. So nice to have you with us. It's an overcast day here in West Virginia. Fall is upon us, 50 degrees outside. We're headed toward the end of the year, clearly. But we're happy to have you with us. And we're here for a deep dive into a very interesting question about what happens if we live to be 150 years old, and how does everything change. And so we hope that you'll stay with us. Hello, Kingsley. Hello, Penny. How are you both?
Doing well. Good to be here. Hi, everybody.
Good, thanks. Hi, John. Hi, Penny. Greetings from a very misty, muggy autumnal day.
Yes, and sadly for us, Greg Braden is in Canada today, I guess, and so it's good for the Canadians, and we're sad he's not with us, but he'll be back next time for sure. So let's go around the table as we start here and say what's been on your mind. Penny, you want to start?
Oh, I keep watching what's going on, and I don't like what I see. And in response to that, I'm watching the population of the West, not just the US, but the West. And the stress is just going up and up and up, and that really concerns me. So that's why our question for today is really appropriate, because when you get stress at that level, the body stops absorbing nutrition, and you can't live like that. That's called the general adaptation syndrome. We call it stress. It's got an official medical name called general adaptation syndrome. And that has 3 stages to it. The first stage starts in 2 minutes, and it's a whole series of physiological changes in the body. The second stage is the fight is on, fight or flight, one or the other. And the third stage is exhaustion. And I see people entering exhaustion, and that worries me. We can't keep going like this. So that's been on my mind big time. And then the other thing, can I say this the way I want to say it? I'm totally disgusted with the US government's response to Hurricane Helene. I'm boggled by that. It's like, God, get out of the way, you guys. So anyway, I won't say any more about that, or I'm liable to blow up the screen, but that really has bothered me a lot. So yeah.
I agree. Yeah. Kingsley.
Well, John, what's on my mind? Well, I'll start by have a choice, heads or tails. In England, we say heads or tails. What do you say in the US? Bottom or heads?
Yeah, heads or tails.
Heads or tails. Okay, which one?
Heads.
Well, I say sod that, because what's on my mind actually is the sense that we're being forced to pick a side, heads or tails.
Yeah.
And it's getting so strong right now that the programming is saying, well, you have to support this side or this side, left or right, blues or reds. And if you don't support this, then that means you're the other, the enemy. And we see it with the Israel and the Middle East, we see it with Ukraine and Russia, and we see it also with the Western US alliance, or the Anglo-American alliance, as they call it, and the BRICS. And they're saying, well, some awakening souls are saying, well, we support the BRICS because they are against this decaying kind of Western hegemonic empire. But you see, both sides are part of the game. When you're playing a puzzle, you don't have sides, you have puzzle pieces. And these are all pieces of the puzzle, but they're being projected as a side. And I find it very frustrating, because we've been told that their game rules is people have to pick a side. And as Penny said, that is causing a lot of anger and division and polarity, because when you're forced to choose a side, then you automatically have your enemies selected for you. And so that again creates division. And what I'm seeing again is even things like, as Penny said, the governmental response to the hurricane and other factors. The factors are coming out more and more to try and create an anger in the people. And that energy, that negative energy, feeds the situation. And there's something feeding off of the people's anger and people's frustration. Now, there's many degrees of the energy as food level. It can be just to depower the human beings, or it can be psychic energy kind of extraction. But I find that's been on my mind, that picking a side, I think it's time that we actually threw a towel in and said, no, there's no side. There's only the side of the human being, or the position of the human being, of love and truth and goodness, and to stay away from playing those side game rules. So that's what's been on my mind.
There's just a lot of things coming downstream here. It seems that they've kind of, in our country at least, decided that Donald Trump is going to win the election. And now you start saying all kinds of things about what are they going to do after the election to either eliminate the president-elect. And so it's big stuff, and it's not over with. This is a amazing kind of period of time. And so it'll be interesting at the very least as we move forward through this time. And so we'll have plenty to talk about, that's for sure. So let's talk about our question and our topic of today. Many times I have read from different scientific sources the presumption or the declaration that the human body is, has a natural lifetime of hundreds of years. Some people talk about 700-800 years, and certainly in biblical terms, there were people who lived that long, but certainly a couple hundred years is commonly bandied about or described as the kind of the shelf life of a human being. And so you have a kind of a question about why in the world do we only live to 70 or 80 or 90 or something like that? And that's one question. Another issue is related to that is that that's been the case for long enough that all of our social systems, our economic systems, our governmental system, everything else is based upon the average lifetime being about 70 or 80 or 90 years old. You have a certain amount of productive life in the middle of that period of time, economically productive life. And so the whole economic system is built upon those sets of relationships. If you start to mess with those, if they either become shorter and you don't generate enough productivity, or people live longer, then you don't have enough capacity within the system to effectively kind of deal with all that. If you get a whole lifetime goes up to be 150 years old, one of the big problems with the governments is that you could have all these riots with all these old people because they wouldn't have anything to do, because the system does not have the mechanism within the system to deal with major, there's a equilibrium within the system that takes into consideration, all of these kind of variables. And so it's always been an interesting kind of notion to me about, what would happen if life extension kind of really worked, or if it was significant. It's a timely question to talk about now, because some of the wealthiest people on this planet have decided that life extension is kind of the key thing that they're going to put their resources into, segment of research, and certainly in terms of science. And just because you've got these billionaires, all of whom are putting money in lots of different kind of ways. At one time, I could see like 4 or 5 different research kind of converging areas of research, all that were pointing toward a life extension because these rich guys want to live longer. There are many kind of indicators that say that the length of life that we have here with humans on this planet is on the verge of being able to be extended rather rapidly. If you got a year for every year, I mean, you're making pretty good progress in this whole process. And so the question kind of is, so what happens if that happens, and particularly if it happens in a hurry? Let's talk a little bit about this, about let's say that you could, in a rapid period of time, it became clear, the research allowed that people could live to be 150, something close to that. how does this system change? What do you think, Kingsley?
Well, thanks, John. Actually, yeah, it's quite a complex question. A lot of iterations there. When I first read that question, my first response was, well, that's going to be a big blow to transhumanism. Because the way I was thinking was that this would be some kind of natural breakthrough of a biological means. So I guess, again, how we respond to this question also shows where we're coming from. So I thought, well, transhumanism has been pushing the longevity pill and the immortality agenda for a long time, because as you said, the rich billionaires, they don't want to die so quickly, they want to keep their power. But I thought initially, oh, if everyone's going to live to 150, then transhumanism is going to have a big blow, because their sales pitch of needing to upload your consciousness to a computer or merge with AI, the Ray Kurzweil kind of Elon Musk kind of pathway, well, people won't need it, because if we're going to naturally live to 150, there isn't that need to merge with AI. But of course, as you pointed out now, John, that road to living longer could be a consequence of technology. So I think the big question is, what's the cause of making us live longer? Because the cause is going to set up a different train of consequences. If the cause is going to be a kind of techno intervention or a transhumanist pill or something, then I think we're going to have the issues you mentioned of it's not going to be equal for all. And once you have that, then I think you're in a really deep rut, and a problematic rut, because obviously those people with money and power and those people who have a certain status quo with the agenda of social stratification are going to want to manage very carefully who gets older and who doesn't. So I'll answer it from my perspective first. Well, my main perspective, I thought, what if it's a natural biological kind of triggering for whatever reason, and it's an equal moving. Everybody more or less has access to 150 years. I think that will have an all-round kind of more decentralized effect. But the first major question that comes from me is, there's a lot of focus on living longer from many different angles. But the main problem is that we still, as a human species, haven't come to terms with what death means. We haven't come to terms with death in our society. So living longer could mean, from a lot of people, they're trying to keep death away. They're trying to keep away from death's door. They're trying to push death away, which assumes that we still have a fear of death, and we think death is the end. So living longer is going to be a lot kind of advantageous for those people who think they are keeping the inevitable further away. But you see, if we realize that we are eternal spirits, eternal spiritual beings, then the question is, would everyone want to have a longer lifespan? Because you have to realize that for some people, I think they realize that they want to continue their journey at some point, at some time. And being in a material realm at some point could become like a prison if they feel they cannot leave it, which is why I feel the transhumanist immortality kind of avenue is very, very dangerous, because it's more like a prison for the spirit, not a liberation at all. So I think if we're going to live longer, we're going to have to need to deal with our understanding of death. Otherwise, we can have a lot of pain in humanity. And we have to understand that death is not this fearing end of life. It's a transitional moment, a continuation of the journey. So we need to have educational modes on how to understand death. The biological implications is, well, we're going to live longer, but are we going to live longer in a healthy way? Because if we're not, then we're just going to extenuate the problems that we have now and just kind of, elongate those problems or exponentially further those issues. Now, if living longer is a pharma conspiracy, then we're going to have problems, because if we're going to have illnesses for longer, we're going to have greater dependency on the pharmaceutical industry of maintaining our health. So they're going to become more or less our governing bodies of maintaining us for 150 years. So it's the question is, again, it's the context. It's the context of living longer. It's not the numerical issue. It's what's involved, what's the cause, and what's the context of living longer. Are we going to need more healthcare from the governments? Now, we already know the governments are broke. Virtually every nation state, or more or less every nation state in the world, is bankrupt. They're living on borrowed time economically. So can they afford further healthcare? And and can we afford further illnesses? So that's an issue to bring into mind, I think. I mean, so sociologically, there's a lot of issues, as you alluded to, John. I think we need a restructuring of life patterns, because our work patterns, again, the work routine is programmed into our lives. We, after educational workhouses, we enter the working sphere. And even now, most countries are trying to push the age of retirement further because they don't have the money to pay for pensions. So already it's, 63, 65, 67, 68, that's going to go on. So when do you enter the workforce and when do you allow to leave it? The problem is that the world at the moment, there's been a closing down of the employment, because we're going to mechanization. So if we're living longer, but technology is going the way it's going now, we're going to further into an automated future. There won't be jobs for people, whether they live to 50, 70, or 150. And in fact, Mr. pop-up historian Noah Yuval Harari has famously or infamously said, the problem of the future is that people are going to become irrelevant. So if they're going to become irrelevant when we have a normal lifespan of, let's say, 80 years, how's that going to continue to the future? We're going to have an extra 70 years of people feeling irrelevant because economically, nation states can't look after them. They can't afford the healthcare, and there won't be an industry. So I think one of the major issues is, and you mentioned it, John, is the question of meaning, because we already have a high degree of nihilism in human life. And I just looked up before we came online. In America, the statistics say that in America in 2022, this is the latest statistics they have, 1.6 million people in the US attempted suicide. Now, that's because there's social problems, whatever, economic problems, social problems, nihilism, alienation, lack of meaning. So I think that's going to be a major issue. Also, if you're going to live longer, on a semi-humorous note, we're going to see some more cults and religions pop up. There'll be the cults of longevity, the cults of whatever, methyl. So, but also we're going to have to deal with the framing of reality, because social management deals with a time frame of a human lifespan. Education, workforce, all these things are a part of social management and reality construct. And so for now, the structure is able in some way, with a lot of cracks, to manage that reality consensus. Because, but imagine you're going to have to double that time span. You're going to have to create a way of imposing or manipulating or ordering, however you want to see it, a reality consensus to go to 150 years. Now, we know the old phrase, people say, how do you get new ideas coming into the system? They say you have to wait for the old guard to die off. You have to wait for the old generation to go out before new ideas can come in. So the question is, what if the old guard is going to live twice as long? Does that mean it's going to take us twice as long for the paradigm to actually move, to get new ideas coming in? That could stagnate human life to a certain degree. So our technology is evolving, but there's a part of like the vision, imagination side of human life, which is stagnating. And also the societal structures need new generations because they operate with the incoming generation.
And so you've made the point quite nicely, is that this is a big complex system that has all of these interconnected working parts. And if you can't do jobs, somehow you're going to have to support all of those people. Maybe it turns into a world where you've got a lot of free time to do a lot of creativity. Well, I don't know. How does that work? Maybe you know, Penny.
Hi, okay. Hang on, I'm still making notes. You guys are making my brain fire in every direction. So I think, I'm going to draw from what I have seen in some of my travels to other civilizations and my own experience being in another civilization. So first of all, almost everything, not to smack you guys in the nose or anything, but everything that I've heard so far is an extrapolation of what we have. And that just isn't going to happen if you live to be 120, 150. A whole new kind of consciousness emerges for that to happen. And it does not include people like Harari saying that people are going to become irrelevant. That is crap. He can, anyway, it isn't the people that become irrelevant. It is the system that becomes irrelevant. As technology develops, people develop right along with it. And pretty soon, the system that they have is no longer meaningful. The second thing is jobs. Everybody structures their life around jobs. Why? That is not the way other people do it. Jobs are like a control mechanism. Got to have this money. Need the job in order to get the money in order to survive. What happens if you take away the jobs? People end up doing something different, something more creative, something better. And so some of the things that you get when you have a society where people generally live, and beginner societies start with, let's just live to our normal natural lifespan, which is 10 times the age at puberty. So in the average human, that's between 120 and 150 years of age. Why are we living to be 70? Some people even less, or 80. What is wrong there that we aren't living to our normal natural lifespan? And I know what's wrong. It's partly the nutrition, it's the amount of stress, it's the amount of poison. We are poisoning ourselves in every way from every direction. Food, water, air, bad sleep, not getting enough sleep. So to live 120 to 150 years, there aren't going to be any 40-year-old presidents, because that is considered still in the cradle. In the advanced civilizations that live a minimum 250 years to 1,250 years, and some of them even longer. So there's no 40 years old, you're just getting warmed up. You're not even ripe. So in order to live to 120 to 150 years, you have to be healthy. There's no big pharma that's going to make you last to be 120. And who would want to suffer that long if you just extrapolate what we have? So you have to have healthy people to start with. Just doing that changes everything. It changes consciousness, it changes awareness, it changes the spirit of a population. And that means their whole spirituality shifts. There is no gigantic medical system in that kind of population. So there's no people raising children and working a corporate job. In the advanced systems, if you're raising children, that is the job. If you're working in one of the, what we call the projects, that's a whole different thing. You have something, you have a gift, you have a passion, you go and contribute, you work with others. It's very creative, it's very powerful. So there's no people having children and giving them away to some daycare center. There's no daycare centers. In the advanced societies, they recognize the stages of life and they organize around those stages. And loosely, and there's about 8 stages, but loosely there's youth, well, there's childhood and then there's youth, and then there's the childbearing stage. And that is, you can't be you can't be somebody raising children if you haven't had massive amounts of training and development of yourself because every single consciousness counts beyond your ability to even imagine. So there's the childbearing stage, then there's the community stage, working in and with the community, helping pull it together, et cetera. Then there's the research and productive stage. Then there's the governance and galactic council stage. And then there's the wisdom stage. And wisdom is when you feed back into the younger ones. This is what you might think about. You never tell people what to do. You give them information and you trust that they will know what to do with it sooner or later. And if they make the wrong choice, they'll figure it out. So we would have an enormous amount of wisdom at our fingertips. People who are very much aware and have been through some stuff and know what the mistakes are. We would have an extraordinary amount of genius, because when you raise children correctly, their genius blossoms. And what you get then is this enormous pot of brilliance and creativity that you funnel toward what are you doing as a people? What is your contribution to life? So that results in longer term decision making, longer term goals. We only live 70 years, and so people make decisions and set goals that will fit in that 70-year, actually it's in a 50-year, 60-year lifespan. Because by 70, they're thinking they're going to be disabled, dysfunctional. Something's going to be wrong with them. So when you have a longer lifespan, you have a whole different basis for making decisions and setting those goals. Every so often I'll hear about somebody my age dying, and I'll think, what? They gave up already? They didn't do what they needed to do. You have to have some self-discipline. That self-discipline is mental, emotional, physical, and spiritual. And yes, when I was younger and I was teaching 90-year-olds exercise programs, and I said to them, how is it you guys are still alive? How come you're living? The youngest one in the group was like 72 and the oldest was 93. And most of them were in their mid 80s to early 90s. And they said, we've had lots of chances to die. What are you talking about? And that just set me back on my heels. I might have been 38 at the time. And I thought, okay, I hadn't thought of it that way. Lots of chances to die. Yeah, we have lots of chances to die, and we have a million chances to live, and we don't take them. We're aligned with death. And that's the last thing I'm going to say. And this is something that the little man in brown robe said over and over. You're going to have to choose an alignment. If you're aligned with life, that's a whole different way of living. If you're aligned with death, keep right on going. Right now, your entire planet is aligned with death. And I think with just hearing that, most people would say, I'm not going to do that anymore. But then you have to follow that up with action. And that involves getting healthy. That involves coming to new decisions. What are you going to do with your consciousness? How are you going to contribute? I think one thing that I wanted to mention that I think Kingsley is right on, when we talk about death, we really, really need to understand that that is not the end of anything. It's a move to another form of being, another world, another reality system, if you're ready for that. Some people just go to the way station. It's a place where people go while they decide, okay, what's next? Or they go there to heal. But you're right, Kingsley. There was a guy, I think I mentioned this in one of our other talks, up in Grand Rapids, and he had developed a camera that allowed him to take pictures anywhere in time. And I think the CIA got a hold of him. He disappeared. His daughter was here. She came to the farm and we had this long conversation, and she said, I knew that technology, and we still have a camera. and she invited me to come and get some pictures of anything I wanted to see anywhere in time. And I never had a chance to do that. But there's also technology that allows us to communicate verbally with people on the other side. And that's an amazing experience. So I tell people all the time, go to Vimeo and look up the video Calling Earth. I think is the name of it, Calling Earth. And it's the story of these people who discovered how to create a link, a technological bridge between us and the people who have died. And they're having conversations. So.
No, I think you're right. I mean, I think what this conversation has highlighted is the fact that the current situation, as it's structured, is not set up to
That's right.
allow or cater for this longevity of the human lifespan, because it's a very constricted, controlled, and kind of ordered and inhibiting structure. So it's, I mean, we talk about the subject of death and the technologies. Everything is being geared towards us being in a perceptually managed, constrained environment. So, when I took John's question, it was like, what if we drop extended lifespan in this current environment?
Uh-huh.
And that's why we have all these complicated issues, because we cannot put the cart before the horse. We cannot just say, here's a magic pill, you're going to live longer, because there's no way we can cater for that in this constrained structure.
That's
so
right.
That's why I asked John, what's the context of, what's the cause of living longer? Because there has to be something before we live longer. There has to be some kind of transformatory event. What the advanced civilization would be like in terms of their social structures. We are not an advanced civilization. We are an infant civilization. So we'd have to get there. We can't just, drop everything right now. There have to be perhaps painful transitions to restructure, the lifestyle patterning, get away with this archaic economic structure, which is basically a kind of indentured, slave kind of structure. We'd have to do away with all those structures first before we get to that advanced civilization. So the question is, what's the cause of us changing? And I think if we put the cart, before the horse, then we can see that other things have to change before we can deal with a longer lifespan.
Yeah, I think that's really true. And thank you for that. And I would add also that some of the civilizations have technological boosters, just like Harari is talking about, but they didn't develop those with bad people in control. That was the first thing. The second thing was they said we had to wait, or we had to keep assessing, have they developed the discipline of that it takes to live longer, which meant getting healthier, living in harmony with life itself, wherever they happen to be. Everybody has to find the harmonic balance point between life and death on their particular planet or in their particular dimension. And if the people didn't have that, they couldn't have the technology. Only those who were 100%, 150% committed to life itself and to doing what the body needed would be targeted or allowed to apply for technological boosters, which really do some amazing things. So they do extend life. You can reset your frequencies. You have both physically as well as consciousness. And once you do that, you're younger. You're just, in the blink, it's like the blink of an eye, to tell the truth. It might be 2 days, take 2 days. Otherwise it's too disturbing. It's when you change your frequencies, it changes your chemistry. Your chemistry changes your feeling state, and some of that is kind of like life, I don't feel good kind of thing. But that technology is waiting for us, the boosters, if I can call it that, are waiting for us if we can grow up, mature to the point of resolving, not imagining, like you said, Kingsley, that we're just going to drop this old guy into the midst of a whole, a setting that is really not supportive. The whole thing has to be supportive.
Yeah, but it it changes, it evolves, and so you've got to have your attitude and your ideas and your values change, and then it translates over time, maybe relatively rapidly or otherwise, into the rest of the other kind of systems. So are you talking about med beds and things like that? No, you're not. I mean, anybody seen a med bed? There's a lot of talk about those things around, and they've seemed to function putatively about in the same way we're talking.
I've seen them, but they're not here. I mean, I haven't seen any here, put it that way.
Well, that's what I keep asking them, saying, show me a photograph. Have you seen one? Because people all talk about them, but they're all kind of drawings.
Yeah, I had the great gift of seeing how they do healing in the future, courtesy of the robes and the med bed. I can even say this is how it works. So, but I don't want to take the time to do that here. But there are other forms of technology that are chips. They generate huge amounts of energy, and their placement in the body makes a big difference in terms of the effect that they have. So there's that whole factor. We don't know enough about the body and how it works naturally without all the chemicals that, drugs and poisons. We don't have any really healthy people nowadays because everybody's loaded with toxins, heavy metals, all kinds of stuff. So yeah, there's really some exciting things waiting for us.
Yeah, exactly, Penny. We don't know the full capacity of a fully 100% working human DNA because, that's a living technology, which is not really, we haven't even understood it properly. And of course, I think you've mentioned it already, that all the toxicity and the pollution. I mean, we have to say there's no coincidence why, the air's being polluted, the foodstuff's being polluted, all the human intake and nutrition is being polluted. It seems as if there's perhaps a natural unfolding evolution that's available within the human being, and that certain agencies on this planet are aware of that. So they're trying to stifle that natural kind of growth and development, because there's so much deliberate toxicity in our lives. They're trying to keep down this kind of natural growth. So I think there's an organic path which is trying to break through also. And just to finish, we could start to, again, do our homework to try to just live, start now, because there was a documentary called, I think, Blue Zones or something. There was a person who wanted to visit all these areas of where people were living longer naturally. And they circled all these zones on their maps with a blue pen. So they just called it a blue zone by coincidence. But one of them famously is in Ecuador, where there's a valley where people, not so Bilawenga or something, where people naturally live longer, and there's zones around. And when they visit, of course, a lot of it is the natural food stuff, that they still have natural organic nutrition, not chemicalized food. Some of it is because of the natural environment and the air and the oxygen and where they're living and the relationship with nature. There are certain patterns. So perhaps, whilst we're in this catch-all before that our transformatory kind of impacts come, we can try and help the growth by doing our best to live, non-toxic lives.
Some of that is water also, Kingsley. It's deuterium depleted water is a common element in all those places.
Wow. That's I studied one of those blue zones in Greece. It amazed me. They had a description at the start of the research of the life, the day-to-day routine of the old folks. Most of them were over 100. They got up about 9:30 or 10 in the morning. They did maybe an hour or two of self-care or whatever they had to do, clean the house, did the dishes, sometimes from the night before, whatever. And then they went to the market. They got some food, brought it home, cooked it. About the time the sun went down, They gathered in the village, played cards, sang, danced until midnight, 1 o'clock, went home and went to bed. That was their every day. And I was just stunned by that. They said it's absolutely essential that we get 8.5 to 9.5 to 10 hours of sleep a day. And they did. And that we eat what we have grown or caught. And a lot of fish in their diet. But it was like, wow. And they're living a very long time. They said we enjoy all the generations. They mixed well with all the generations. It was like a big extended family. So we have been divided. I think, yeah, John,
Human contact. Human
Yeah.
contact is exactly that we are, we need that kind of context of our human beingness.
Yeah.
Yeah. Next time, next episode here of Quartet, we're going to talk about this kind of suppression of the evolutionary kind of push that that both of you are alluding to there. That would be an interesting conversation, I'm sure. Well, thank you both very much, and to our listeners and viewers, thank you for being with us. This only happens because of you, and we appreciate your comments and your questions. We come to you like this every 2 weeks from the Arlington Institute, which is our little think tank that we started in Arlington, Virginia, and moved out here to Berkeley Springs, West Virginia, about 100 miles from Washington and Baltimore. And we hold forth with a whole variety of programs that are all focused on and oriented toward this transition, this big move to a whole new emergent period in human activity and life on this planet. And it's unlike anything we've ever seen before. And so it merits the kind of discussions that we have here in the Quartet and other places, because we need to get out in front. We need to help define and we need to shape this new world. We got a chance to do that for the first time, and certainly in kind of human history as we understand it. And we can build a new world, and that's what we're about and what we're trying to do. You'll find out complete information, all kinds of information at arlingtoninstitute.org. We encourage you to be there and to check out some of the other programs that we have. So thank you both for being with us, and thank all of you who are our viewers. Come back and be with us again with Quartet in another couple weeks. Take care.
Yeah. Thank you, everybody. Have a wonderful 2 weeks where nothing is happening.
Stay sane.